Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mona, can you take roll call?
Yes, Director Davidson.
Here.
Director Stump.
Present.
President Ratterman.
Here.
Director Dean.
Here.
And Director Dooley.
Here. Over there.
Okay, public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for public consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment this morning? Seeing none, I'll move on to our consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. We've got 3 items. Item 3A, approval of minutes of the board for the meetings of May 28th, June 3rd, and June 11th, 2014. At 3B, ratify claim summary number 508, Secretarial Fund, in the amount of $2,127,784.67 for June 2014. And number 3C, annual resolution to submit delinquencies to county tax rolls.
Move for acceptance.
I'd like to pull 3B, please.
Yeah, we do have a,
3B.
And 3C also.
you'd like to have 3C pulled? Okay. So we're going to pull 3B and 3C for discussion.
Move for acceptance of 3A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for acceptance of 3A on the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0 on the consent agenda for 3A. Now we're take up 3B first. Have a discussion to 3B, ratify claim summary, secretarial fund in the amount of $2,127,874.
The question I had, in the totals, we're looking at approximately $312,000 for payroll, and what seems to be an inordinate amount of money, other payroll-related costs of $288,000. Normally, it's about a third of that, and I was just curious what the difference was from the ordinary one-third of the $100,000, $125,000 to the $288,000.
Good morning.
Thank you, Patty.
The difference would be related to the general manager termination in the taxes.
I see. So it's actually over double from, and where was that? Ordinarily, we have what, about a third of our employee-related expenses over and above our actual payroll.
I'd say it's more than a third. It's closer to half.
Really? That much? Okay. Well, anyhow, you answered my question. With that, I'd like to move that we accept 3B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We have the discussion. Ken?
Bob, if you haven't pulled it, I was going to, because I questioned the same figure 30 days ago at the meeting, and the answer we received at the time was that was the quarterly related programs such as unemployment insurance and payroll taxes and all the rest of it. It seemed a pretty high figure at the time related to the amount of payroll, but I didn't question it further. And then this month, with it being so much larger, and you can't have quarterlies 2 months in a row at those kind of figures, and this 288 is actually as much or more than, as Bob pointed out, the entire payroll. So I think what we need is some transparency in what this other payroll figure is, and I would like to see a breakdown from last month and this month and for future months going on, as opposed just other with no definition as what is in the other. So if we can get those figures, I would appreciate it.
Do we have a breakdown of,
Yes, I could break it down on here if you'd like. This is how it's always been reported in the past,
okay.
back forever. But if you'd like to have more information, I can certainly do that.
Okay, yeah, just get a breakdown. We certainly want to be transparent, and if that's, if we have a request for that, I think that's reasonable, just to break it down a little bit further and show exactly where each dollar's going to.
Sure.
So last month, this month, and ongoing to where the other is broken down into particular categories.
I can tell you, it's payroll taxes twice a month, it's the retirement twice a month, we had the extraordinary expense of the GM, and we have our third-party flow-throughs.
Right, and I think it would be.
And I think what-
important to know that breakdown.
We weren't very familiar with the breakdown, Ken, and to show, we'll do this for a
We're not seeing it though.
for a one-time deal so that you become more familiar with it. We will break it down for this month and next month, and to show where those figures are going. But going forward, I think we're going to keep with the same program that we have for several years. Is it? So we'll be able to bring that to our next meeting in 2 weeks. Is that fair? Okay, thank you. Okay, we've pulled 3C for discussion. Have we voted on 3B? Okay, we're still on 3B. We got a motion and a second on 3B. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Okay, now discussion for 3C. Bertha.
Well, good morning. I'm Bertha Underhill, ratepayer out of Camp Connell. I would just like to ask a couple of questions about item 3C on your consent agenda. This is just, when I saw the amount, I was just a little bit blown away, to put it in the vernacular. We have no basis for comparison when we see an item like this. I am still concerned about the rates that are being levied on our ratepayer, and so when I see amount like $107,000, that's a little bit disconcerting, because they're all delinquent utility service accounts. I want a basis of comparison. What was it last year when we had to submit it to the county for collection? And then I'd also like to find out if you have done anything new to help you in your collections of these exorbitant rates. I mean, is there a new procedure? Is there a new policy? How are you working with the ratepayer? What options are you offering them? The whole process, the whole policy is what I'm questioning.
Okay.
So
And this is, Patty, can you come to the microphone? Just for answer a few of these questions. How often does this item appear? Do we submit delinquencies to the county tax roll?
We submit them annually.
Okay.
And they go on the tax rolls in the fall, and then, of course, we're on the teeter program, so we get paid 3 times throughout the year. This amount is very similar. I don't know the amount off the top of my head of last year's, but it's very comparable to last year's amount.
Okay. So it's about the same amount as before the rates increase? Okay, so the rate increase had no effect or very little effect on the uncollectibles?
No.
Okay. Does that help answer a little bit of your question, Bertha?
it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Did you reclassify some monies somewhere to another?
No.
All of
So
this,
this is the standard procedure that we follow every year for submitting the delinquencies to the county for the tax rolls.
exactly what was the amount last year?
I couldn't tell you right now, but I can get that information for you right after the meeting if you like.
Would you please?
But it's very comparable.
Okay, and then procedure is still the same on
Yes,
going after the delinquent account?
yes. Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. Okay, thank you so much.
I got one question.
Just as a note, it's 6/1000ths of our budget. 006 of our budget. It's still a lot of money, but
Yes.
that's the reality of it.
I have a question, not directly related to the delinquent accounts, but have you been able to look at a breakdown of whether or not we're just talking about foreclosures versus people who just never paid versus potential commercial units? Is there some way that we can see the demographics of these delinquent accounts and get a sense of where the failures are? I mean, I know some people just don't bother to pay, and every once in a while, when they go into a lien situation, they just go pay up, but,
I'd say 75% of the people on this list are repeat offenders.
Or people in foreclosure that have moved
You know,
on.
foreclosure is different. That's pulled from the tax rolls, and it goes to our foreclosure attorney for collection.
I see.
These are strictly current customers that are delinquent on their accounts, and it could be water and sewer.
Do you know offhand how many of those are unapproved lots?
I don't think any of them would be unimproved. because
Well,
they
I thought that, I remember looking, several years ago, I was looking through some of these delinquent accounts, and I noticed that there were a number of people who had some of these parcels as investments, and, you know, they weren't moving, they just didn't bother to pay up. And now maybe that was, maybe they were more going in the direction of foreclosure, I don't really know, but you think most of these are all improved lots? I mean, I know some of these places pay connection fees, but they don't build until there's a market. So I'm wondering if you don't have that
There's
information.
no way to tell.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Okay, moving on to item 4. This is a public hearing. Going to start by opening the public hearing on annual standby assessment fees. This is for Indian Rock Vineyard subdivision. Should we take these
One at a time.
one at a time? Okay. We'll start with Indian Rock Vineyards subdivision sewer.
Move for approval of Indian Rock subdivision standby fees.
Second.
I have a question for clarification. I was on the board at that time when we accepted that system, which should have never been accepted, but we got it. It was, now this is the only one in here that has a charge of $10 per month instead of per year.
Correct.
And it's a very small system. It doesn't pay for itself, even with this, I don't think. Was there a justification why we put it at $10 per month? And how many of those lots are there in this system that are not hooked up to the sewer?
I can answer that. There are 2 lots that are getting the standby assessment fee.
So this is going to be $240 a year. That ought to help a lot.
Cover our cookies.
Okay, well, I just wanted some clarification, and that jumped out at me, that this was the only one that had a per month instead of per year charge. Thank you, Patty.
Do we open and close the hearing for each? Okay.
Do we approve them while the hearing is open? Can we do that? Okay.
You probably just want to ask for public
I've
comment.
already got
Okay.
a motion and a second.
We got a motion and a second on the Indian Rock Vineyards. We do have a public comment.
Before you proceed, I kind of have a question here. I've been reviewing the statute on these standby fees, and as I understand it, and I'm not an attorney, isn't there some way in which you have to give notice of this, quote, public hearing? And I may be one of the few people in the entire county that ever saw it by looking at the packet information yesterday. And is that adequate notice to the ratepayers to object if they wish to do so? And number two, based on the statute, you're supposed to give a statement to those that are going to be asked to pay these fees, and that you have to tell them what benefit they are going to derive from paying these fees, and I see nothing that indicates what these property owners are going to receive for their monies.
Okay, Patricia?
We do publish the public notice in the newspaper in both Calaveras and Tuolumne counties twice, on June 20th and June 27th.
Okay.
That's required by law.
And the other question, as far as Ken pointed out, was the policy regarding notifying customers. How?
I know that we don't have to actually mail out a notice to the public, but I can't tell you why. It's in my notes, but I don't have them here.
Okay.
There was some note about June 20th and June 27th. I assume those are the days you published it in the newspaper?
Yes.
Is there any requirement as to how many days' notice you need to give before a public hearing? I would think 30 would be a minimum.
No, I believe it's 1 week.
Do you have the stack of complaint letters regarding this?
I don't have any complaint letters.
Okay, thank you.
This is a continuing system, not a hearing on establishing something that you had never done before.
That's correct.
This is ongoing since when, approximately?
It depends on which ordinance you're referring to, but it's the first one started in 1976,
Okay.
and then 91, 98, and with some revisions.
So is an annual renewal required?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's move forward. Is any other public comment on assessment fees? Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay. We do have a motion and a second on the Indian Rock subdivision standby fee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good. I'll make a motion.
5-0.
I'll make a motion to approve the West Point Improvement District standby fee.
I have a question on the number of unimproved lots up there. Do you have that information at all?
I don't.
Okay, that's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second on West Point Improvement District 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Make a
Carries
motion.
5-0.
Pardon?
I said carries 5-0.
Make a motion to approve the Ebbets Pass Improvement District 5
Second
standby
that.
fees.
Question. This is a question I raised prior to this. I know that every other improvement district standby fee is paid by the owner of unimproved lots, or those lots that are valued under $5,000. And Ebbets Pass is the only one where people receiving services, both water and wastewater, actually pay this $10 fee, as well as the people who with the unimproved lots. I guess I have several questions. First one is, do we know offhand how many unimproved lots there are up in the Ebbets Pass Improvement District area? Do we have that information?
I think it would be roughly 4,300. If you look at the early approximation in the master plans of about 10,000 lots total, we have 5,700 connections, customers, leaving roughly 4,300 unimproved lots.
With the total value of the standby fees at $130,000, it seems like Ebbets Pass is paying the greatest bulk of that. Is that correct?
Correct.
almost to the tune of $100,000?
Yes,
Okay.
on that order.
Okay. I know that this was, in an email you sent me, you explained that there was a citizens committee that agreed that standby fees should be shared by all parcel owners, regardless of their improvement level. And this was presumably for the purpose of capital improvement?
Yes.
Okay. Was it ever at that time agreed, and is that specifically for the Ebbets Pass area, or is it just capital improvement in general?
No, it was specifically for servicing the debt up in the Ebbets Pass area.
And what's the status of that debt now?
That's the debt package that was rolled over and refinanced. And Patty, I think that's the one that comes due 2018, roughly?
Yes.
So the additional $10 for the improved parcels went towards debt service as well, is that correct?
That was the intent, yes.
That was the intent.
So it didn't go at all to O&M?
It was supposed to go solely towards the debt service.
Okay.
Is it accounted for like that in our financial records?
I'd have to check
Okay.
on that.
It was a rather small portion of the overall debt service, but
Well, I'm sure.
It was
I
a
guess what
contributing
bothers
factor.
me, and I think I shared this with you, was the inconsistency of the wording on the standby fees. You know, we're an enterprise district now, which presumably suggests that we have equal standards for all service areas that we have. And, you know, the discussion about, I know the bulk of the stuff that's following from Jenny Lynn, Saddle Creek, Copper Cove, they all talk about standby fees for lots with a value, improved value of under $5,000. And of course, we have Indian Rock, which is a different situation entirely. West Point is where there is no service provided to a parcel that might have service available to them because they're within the service boundaries. And I guess, you know, Ebbets Pass stands out as unique by having both the unimproved lot owners and the improved lot owners having to pay the standby fee.
What's, Bob, if it's under $5,000, it's unimproved?
No, the point I'm getting at is that the homeowner in Ebbets Pass pays a standby fee where that doesn't happen in any other.
Well, I think the history goes back to, and if this were to occur today, if a new development comes online and has no connections, there has to be something put aside to pay the debt service. Well, these are old figures that have been here. We vote on them every single year.
Yeah, I know.
They haven't changed in value, but if a new situation came up today, I mean, we would probably be doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we had money to collect debt service, but while connections
Okay,
came
but
up.
let me just say that for me, that's not the issue. The issue is that in no other instance where we're collecting standby fees do improved lots pay a standby fee. Do homeowners within a service district pay a standby fee? It's only supposedly for unimproved lots, but in Ebbets Pass, they pay a standby fee, whether it's an empty lot or whether it's a home. And that's my issue. It seems to me, quite frankly, unfair. I mean, I've listened to the arguments that people have presented, and I seriously question it. But I think that's something that needs to be examined. Now, if this is tied somehow or another to the debt service that was incurred in Ebbets Pass in the improvement district, and that debt gets retired in 2018, to me, that on the outside would be the farthest out that we should continue serving that particular population with a standby fee for homeowners. But it just doesn't make sense that we have these inconsistent kinds of requirements depending upon the improvement district. So that, yes, Larry.
It may not change your perspective, but it is permissible under the water code.
Oh, I understand that. I read the water code, so I realize that it is permissible. But our convention here at CCWD seems to be that we only charge, in all the other improvement districts, those unimproved parcels are the only ones paying the standby fee, as opposed to homeowners who are actually receiving water and sewer services. So,
going on memory, which is notoriously inaccurate.
We're in trouble now.
Well, all these systems were financed differently at different times in our history, and they were considered at that time. I mean, each one is unique. I mean, they were financed, and probably every single one was financed with a different method.
Well, as I remember.
Go ahead, Dennis.
It was, the construction and expansion had almost come to a halt up there in Ebbets Pass area. And they had tremendous needs for capital improvement funds, and this was put there to help supplement the capital improvement funds. And that was the only way they thought they could help supplement these funds, which they didn't have that in the other areas, which were still undergoing a fairly rigorous expansion in their areas.
Ken, do you have a comment, question?
As proof, if you look at my property tax bill, I'm not only paying you a monthly fee, I am paying you the $10 a year standby fee. So I'm here to tell you that it is actually true. The other thing is, in the present resolution that you'll be considering for Ebbets Pass, it says the money is supposed to be exclusively to finance capital costs and maintenance expenses, which, as I understand it, the money goes directly into the general fund. So what accountability do we have for that unless it's put into a reserve fund for a particular purpose? And I don't see that if it's going into the general fund.
Where do you think we pay for maintenance with?
Well, that's a dollar. That's all that is. You throw it in the general fund and you pay the light bill with it too. So, I mean, there's no accountability for it that way.
Okay, let's move on.
Question?
Go ahead.
No,
Who called for the question?
I think he had a question. We got a motion and a second on Genuine Improvement District 6, I think.
5.
No.
Ebbets Pass?
You jumped.
We're
On
still on
Ebbets Pass Improvement District 5, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me? No? One?
1. 4-1, Mr. Dean opposed. Moving on, Genuine Improvement District 6, Copper Cove Improvement District 7, including Copperopolis Town Site for water.
Saddle Creek subdivision, Copper Cove, Lock and 10 ID, they're all in one, right?
We handle these all, yeah, okay, Saddle
I'll
Creek
move for acceptance.
for all three, Saddle Creek, Copper Cove. Okay, we got a motion by,
There's actually 4, I believe. Genuine Improvement District 6, Copper Cove Improvement District 7, including Copperopolis Town Site, Saddle Creek subdivision, and Copper Cove, Lock and 10 IDS 8S.
Okay, all-
For acceptance.
all 4 of them, we got a motion.
And I second it.
Yes, 7 and 7.
So that, you have,
I got you. Okay, sorry about that. You were right.
Okay, we're gonna start over. With Genuine Improvement District 6, including Copper Cove, Improvement District 7, including Copperopolis Town Site, is the only item we're working on right now. We need a motion.
motion, I move.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Okay, now we'll do Saddle Creek Subdivision Improvement District 7.
So moved.
We got a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It's 5-0. And our last annual standby assessment fee item is Copper Cove Lock Antenna Improvement District 8S for sewer.
For acceptance.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing on annual standby assessment fees. Go to item 5, old business. There's nothing to report in old business. New business, 6A, presentation from VHI Management Consulting for recruitment of general manager for possible discussion/action. Stacy, take it away.
With us today, we have Brent Ives
Ives with BHI Management Consulting. He's going to provide a little presentation to you in regards to GM recruitment, and you'll have the opportunity to ask him any questions at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Mr. President and Board. Good morning to you all. My name is Brent Ives. I own BHI Management Consulting and another firm, goodboardwork.com. Do a lot of work with special districts up and down the state, with 3 or 4 each week, doing different kinds of work, strategic planning, recruiting, and organizational assessment and so forth. I'm very pleased to offer this proposal to you with regard to a single interest, and that is a long-term productive relationship that serves the public well between you and your new general manager. If we can identify that right person, then that does indeed create a long-term productive relationship. Then not only do you win, but the public wins, and in fact, I win because we've been able to get you to that point. That, as you know, is a tricky business to try to find just the right fit for this agency. Not only its history of where it's been, you all up there, the staff, the community, all of the issues that are going on technically in the district. And so it is my contention, having done this on both sides of the dais myself. I believe you all know that I'm also an elected official in the city of Tracy and have been for 23 years. Is that if you don't work the fit issue up front, really trying to profile an individual before you go out to look for them, then the sort criteria is just a standardized sort. It's quite easy in my experience to go out and be able to assemble a candidate pool. You can put out the ads, you can say all the flowery words, you can say, come on up here to San Andreas, it's a great place to work, this is the place you want to be, and we will indeed get a nice candidate pool. However, it's another thing to be able to sort through that candidate pool and be able to fit the right person with their personality, their style, their background, their experience into this job so that you do have that long-term and productive relationship. Some of the unique aspects of our approach is I don't do this for many, I do this for a few. I won't recruit for another manager in a water district anywhere while I'm doing this recruitment. That is different than most recruiting services. They're looking for several at the same time. You're the only client that I'll be looking for a water or wastewater manager during the time I'm looking. We're not a huge firm, as I said. We're not a turn and burn firm, meaning we do exclusive searches. This is a search that I will spend, I'm hoping, significant time with you to understand what it is you really like, and maybe even more importantly, maybe what you don't like in a general manager, and the kinds of experiences that you have so that we can roll that up into trying to identify just the right person or present to you a suite of people that would be right for you. I have many similar clients. Just last week, the contract was signed allowing me to do this today with a community services district in Bear Valley, California, and they did sign their contract with their general manager, and so we're very pleased about that. West County Wastewater District, Bear Valley Community Services District, Costa Mesa Sand District, Sunny Slope Water District. A lot of those recruitments we have successfully. In every one of those cases, those managers are still there. And that's our hope, is that we can, again, provide that long-term productive relationship. Because I think, as you know, one of the most difficult times is when you are finding out that the manager's not going to work. You make the decision. You don't have you have a solid interim like you have now, but you don't have that general manager that you badly need to be able to really move ahead. And then the time it takes to find them and then bring them up to speed is quite a time. And so it's really important that you don't have to go through that as often as you like. Now, the average right now for general managers in the state is about 4 or 5 years. And so you're not too far off the average, but you're a little bit off the average. And so it's important to consider those things. As such, I have 3 stages proposed for you. This isn't rocket science. This is pretty much standard kind of things, except the way that we do each of them. The 3 stages are the board preparation and targeting through profiling of the next general manager, as I discussed, then the search activities to establish a qualified and candidate pool, and then the selection activities, which, of course, you can have a good candidate pool, but if the selection activities don't filter properly, if you don't really end up with the right person to hire for whatever reason, or if the selection activities don't give you the kind of information you need to be able to feel comfortable with your next general manager in terms of long-term productive relationship, then why bother? We really need to do every bit of this right, and that's certainly what I hope to offer you today. I would get started on this as early as next week, if possible. It depends, because one of the first activities I'd need would be with you. And so that would be the closed session to determine what are the criteria necessary, what are the kinds of things that we need to have that discussion on profile and job fit. From there, I go out and begin putting together ads, or really whatever you all feel is the right approach. You may have some hybrid ways that you'd like to engage. I'm open to that. I want to give you what you need, but I do want to advise you on what I consider best practices in order to get there. I would start next week. It looks to me, usually these things take 4 or 5 months. That could be shortened if there were the perfect candidate sitting out there waiting to take the job. We'd have to determine whether that's indeed, that person is indeed out there. I believe that you've all got my proposal in front of you. I can go over some of the costs involved. This is the standardized way that we approach it. However, you may have some other thoughts regarding that standardized approach, and I'd certainly be willing to hear them. With that, Mr. President, I'm certainly willing to take questions from you all. I understood that you had some questions. I'd be glad to.
We're going to entertain questions from the dais here first. Go ahead, Don.
During the process, you do the search and you bring us a list of candidates. Say there's 6 of them or whatever. If that pool does not work out, where do we go from there?
Well, if that whole pool does not work out, I always list candidates in A, Bs, and C bands. So if we have 40 candidates, and it's for everyone, it's just a spreadsheet. But based on your profile, I do some preliminary sorting of what seems to be more qualified. Now, I present them all to you, but I'll spend more time on the A band, those that are obviously qualified and obviously fit in your profile to the degree you're asking. And if that A band doesn't work out, we have the option of going down to the C band and looking more closely at those individuals, or going out again and doing another round of advertisements, because time, even a couple of months, can change the candidate pool fairly significantly.
And that E, B, and C band that you're talking about is going to be different for each client you're working for, obviously, based on our initial meeting. And
Well, if presuming that the fit criteria are different for different agencies, and they're somewhat different. There's a lot of commonalities to them, but there's some very important particulars as well. They're all I mean, this group, for instance, I just got done with this group. They only hired one of them. There are 42 there that were interested in that job. That job's a little different than this job. That doesn't mean that if I were to get the contract today and we were to go through the kind of the profiling activity and some of those weren't fit, I wouldn't be on the phone calling them, and some others I know. Right now, just based on my early criteria, there are at least 7 or 8 people that I know that I would target specifically to look at this job, to get into the candidate pool, along with all those others. There's a number of approaches there, however, but the standard way would be to get them into the candidate pool.
Mr. President,
well, please, go ahead, Dennis.
one thing that has become at least painfully clear to me is that general managers, when we seem to hire them, do not seem to understand how large and complicated this district is, despite the fact that we have only about 17,000 customers water and wastewater. It covers, I don't know how many we got, but 8 or 10 different systems scattered all over the county. Plus we have all kinds of regional water and wastewater issues to deal with, including Gray Delta and water rights, and all the other ancillary issues we deal with. And I've had a couple of general managers say to me that they did not understand the vastness of this system
Coming in.
when they came in. And
That's unfortunate. That should not be the case.
well, most places are only one system or two systems that you're dealing with, and usually in a compact area. This one's 8 or 10 systems scattered over a huge area, and so I wanted to impress upon you that you could impress upon potential candidates that that's what they're dealing with.
Well, very good, and absolutely, it would be nice to feed that to them. On the other hand, I would expect anybody in the A band to have done that homework. And in fact, I think you should test them on that if indeed they're able to be able to articulate to some degree your system back to you. I don't think it's rocket science to be able to find out that you have several systems, that you've got Bay Delta issues and water rights issues. Most top water people would figure that out and say, I better do my homework before I come in and do any kind of selection activities with the board. And so that's a really important selection criteria. Do they do the homework? Do they know what they're getting into? If they haven't, then something's not right, because you're looking for a top layer here if you can. That being said, there may be some constraints to being able to get that top layer in the room, but that's my problem. But I think you're right on. They should have done their homework, and they should know that coming in.
Brent, how long is, I know you've been an elected official for, you said 23 years. How long have you been doing recruiting?
I've been doing recruiting for 11 years.
Okay, and how many on your, how large is your staff that would assist you?
I have 2 people in my office that assist me. They're doing most of the administrative stuff. I do all of the board interaction. They do some reference interaction, but I do all the candidate interaction, all the board interaction.
And how many open accounts do you have ongoing at this time?
At this time, I have none.
Okay.
I just finished last week with the one. And as I said, I usually do one at a time. Now, if a hospital district were to come up or an airport district were to come and say, we want to, then that's a different animal. I would take them on if they were indeed interested. But I would not take on another water customer.
Okay, and in your 11 years, how many water and wastewater clients have you serviced?
I believe I've done 11.
Okay.
As I look at it, I've got a number of, past clients here. Mhm.
Okay.
So how do you compile your list of candidates again?
I'm sorry.
How do you compile your list of candidates? Through trade publications or?
Yeah, we do a pretty standard, along with what I already know out in the industry, because I was with a city yesterday, I was with a resource conservation district yesterday, the day before I was with a community services district. All that to say that I'm out in the industry a lot. And so I'm always keeping track of for instance, there's one that applied for Sunny Slope County Water District. We placed the general manager there 2 years ago. The second candidate is just ready to go to be a great general manager for someone. And he's on my list to call. It may be 2 years, it may be that they don't want to relocate here, it may be that they have some other plan, but along with that targeting, just of my knowledge, then there's going to be the standard CWEA, Aqua, Western Cities, CSDA, there'll be ads in every one of those. Almost all of it's done online now, very little in print.
Okay. Did any of our staff come up and ask for your card today?
Not yet. I'd welcome them to do so.
Larry?
I have already, I'll make the disclaimer, I've already targeted Larry. We've already had that discussion.
I got a question or two.
Go ahead, Bob.
You probably know that we've listed ads in different publications for announcing recruiting a general manager. If we were to look at that candidate pool ourselves, our contract with you would be the same, would it be less? I mean, if we hired from that as opposed to somebody you offered? How do you work that out?
So if you were to do your own ads,
We already put ads out before
you
we...
have already put out ads, I would recommend that the results of those ads come to me, and that they would get into the same candidate pool. Otherwise, it's going to get very confusing.
Okay. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think that's a logistic thing. For the sake of the public, your cost would be what?
Well, my fee cost, it's here somewhere. Thank you. It is, for my fee, it's $18,000. The 4 or 5 trips to San Andreas, of course, and then there's a benchmarking process that you all go through. You establish a benchmark. It's an online assessment. I work with an industrial psychologist to clarify that benchmark, and then each final candidate has to take that assessment, an assessment against that benchmark as they come. We have that. There's a cost to that. And then background checks. It comes out to around $20,800 is the estimated cost.
I got several other questions that are really more specific to me. You had mentioned that when we discussed the parameters of hiring a general manager, we do it in closed session. Is there some reason why we wouldn't discuss what district interests might be in public forum, just so we could be a bit more transparent about the kind of person we're looking for and what the expectations might be?
Sure, and it can be done in both. Often, I hear it, I do it both ways. It often depends on the advice of your district council relative to the contract that you're going to eventually enter into with a general manager. The board can open any part of that they wish. They can also close that piece on that basis if indeed that's what your council would advise.
Matt, do you have an opinion at this point?
I don't have an opinion on, I mean, without talking specific, he's correct. If we're going to talk about specific individuals, for sure that we won't do that in open session because there's privacy concerns. If we're going to talk about the contract, we'd probably do that in closed session, just
But as
because
to the parameters of what...
if you
we're
wanted
looking
to
for
have a
general manager,
discussion, that's up to, yeah, you can have a discussion on the parameters.
I don't know if that was one of the...
And there's one further thing, and that is if there is an internal candidate, then it's reasonable to assume that that internal candidate gets an unfair advantage over those that did not get to hear the outcome of that public meeting.
I see.
It's just a nuance, but it's there.
Yeah, I got a couple more questions. You were generous when you said that we don't quite come up to the standard average span of a GM's tenure. And I guess this really goes to your recruiting process and how you would approach the issue of an agency that doesn't seem to be able to keep a general manager, number one. And number two, come November, we could have a 4-0 turnover in the board. And, you know, to hire an individual who faces that unknown quantity would I think be problematic, and I'd be curious to know how you'd address that.
I think it does create an interesting conundrum in that you generally get less of a candidate pool because of the ambiguity of the future relative to the board. You'll get probably a proposal for your finalist that would have a clause in there relative to how soon after an election they can or can't be fired. There would be, there's a lot to be said for the fact that your experience as a board put to the task of hiring a general manager is important. And of course, candidates will think that, no, it'd be better that we do it because we're the ones that are going to win and we're going to have say over how this person does their job in the future. I think that it could indeed affect your ability to some people's assessment of the situation here and whether or not they want to enter into the candidate pool. It is very difficult to tell. I haven't had those discussions with anyone relative. We did not have any problem in Bear Valley. They had a similar track record, but that was 3 or 4 months ago when we started that. I think that what's important for you all is to have a very deliberate discussion about why that occurs. Why is it that we have a hard time holding on to general managers? And that's something I certainly want to, that discussion I certainly want to have with you, and I think that is an important adult discussion.
That's probably appropriate closed session discussion as well. That's all I have.
Do you have, you forgot?
Yeah. Oh, I remember.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
When you have a candidate that has an existing position and there's confidentiality connected to their putting their name in the hat here, how do you deal with that unless we are in a closed session situation?
They have to be upfront, very explicit about the amount of confidentiality they would like to have. Remember, they're the ones that are applying for a job, so they can't insist on confidentiality. They can insist on it if they're, say, look, if I can't get it, then I won't apply. But we try to work out the specifics of that and make sure that they know at what point in the process can we do the kinds of checks with those closest to you. Generally, what we do is work with them to keep them into the candidate pool. If they're really great candidates and they continue to be viable, then we have a discussion with them on when we can call their colleagues, their whomever that might be. That being said, I know a lot of people around, and I oftentimes get in from the back door and ask for confidentiality of that discussion. Just in terms of reference checking.
I notice we do have a question
Sure.
from the public. Bertha, did you have a comment or question?
Thank you. I represent a group of people in Calaveras County who are very concerned about the fact that for years we've hired a general manager from out of the county. They come from Southern California, they come from Northern California, the Bay Area, and they just don't get it. And I have been in that situation, I know. So that what I'm asking the board is, as you set up your requirements for this recruitment of the general manager, that you take away some of the things that eliminate a local getting the job. We have some great brain power here in Calaveras County, and we all know that. These people who have had careers, and yes, they might be willing, but is there something that's preventing them from applying for the job? So you might think about that. Seriously consider hiring local. Thank you.
We'd love to see locals apply, and I don't know if that's happened or if anyone's responded locally to our current ads, but I agree with Bertha's comment that would be a plus if that could happen. Any other comments, questions up here, members of the public? Okay, this is a discussion.
What's the status of, is this gentleman the one we're going to hire, or is this just for discussion?
This is, that is an opportunity that we have, that we do have. We've got his proposal amongst, go ahead, Stacy, you want to take this as to where you want to go with this, or what staff has recommended?
At this time, the agenda item is discussion or action, so at this time, you can take action to go into contract with BHI Management Consulting. As my recommendation, I would recommend that we do go with BHI, but that is up to the board.
Okay, thanks for the clarity. So we've got discussion on this. If we do want to take action, this is, entertain a motion at this time.
I'll motion that we go with this gentleman, his company.
Okay,
I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. A lot of discussion already. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Ives, and thank you very much for your presentation and being here. Are you going to hang around for the meeting? Okay. All right, that's it with new 6A. Okay, we're on to 6B, under new business, discussion action regarding courtesy billings for tenants/property managers. Welcome, Jeffrey Meyer, Director of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. Back in December, your board heard a presentation by Lynn Gentry, who is Director of Support Services, discussing courtesy billing for tenants and property managers. This means, as you're well aware, the property owner is the ultimate party who is responsible for the billings for any property, any account that we have. Past practice had been to provide courtesy notices of the billings and reminder notices to the tenants and the property owners. Over the years, customer service has looked at that, and she prepared a study that not only showed the card costs associated with that, but the time and effort by customer service representatives working with property owners, tenants, and property managers, and the time involved in working through those relationships, sometimes good relationships, sometimes bad relationships, and customer service often got in the middle of those. And this is just kind of his background as to building up to that decision. And what Lynn came up with was approximately $18,000 to $20,000 per year in hard costs to be able to provide these courtesy notices. It was recommended to the board at that time to discontinue the practice of furnishing courtesy notices beginning in April of this year. Your board took action to do so, and property managers, or property owners, tenants, and property managers were notified by mail in February of the new practice and available billing options. This is a copy of the letter that was sent out giving them the options. Everybody was notified back in February. Customer service fielded numerous calls during that time frame explaining options, including online billing options for people, tenants, and property managers to go online to see this, including setting up electronic bills to be sent by email. So those options were available
To who?
to tenants and property managers.
So we will send a bill to a tenant.
If the property owner
The
provide,
property owner.
yes, and that is an option that's available now, sent electronically.
But the property owner has to authorize that.
Correct. And so they went through this process. Yes, there's been a number of phone calls to deal with this. We've gone through we finished up the second cycle just recently because we wanted to take a look at what impact it would have on customers. Director Davidson asked us about a month or so ago to take a look at this. We're taking a very measured approach. We've got some ideas because we went from one extreme to another. I admit that. We've got some ideas of finding some common ground as to what we can do to accommodate property managers or property owners who do not wish to use some of the tools that we have right now at this particular point in time. At this point, as I said, we're wrapping up the second billing. Joel Metzger, Community Relations Customer Service Manager, is coordinating that effort to look at all the data to see if there's any been spikes in certain reminder notices, lock-offs, and such. Customer Service has kicked around a few ideas. We're not quite ready to present those ideas because we're still doing the assessment of what the cost would be associated with maybe providing paper courtesy billings, additional costs and such. But at this particular point in time, we feel we're moving ahead on coming up with middle ground, and we'd like to bring those items back to your Finance Committee meeting. I have not addressed this yet to President Radaman or Director Stump, but I'd like to have a meeting at the end of this month to discuss those options. Yes, sir.
Initially, when this came out, I got numerous phone calls from property managers that were highly upset with the process. Last week, I started a follow-up with each one of them. I've only been able to get a hold of 2 so far, but I found that once they understood the options clearly, then they might not like to have to change their process, but they felt like it was something that was functional for them. I'd really like to talk to more of the property managers so I have a better handle on it. I don't know how, 2 is not a huge bunch. I think I've got about 7 I've got to deal with. But I find that there are options. I think that we'd really like for you to bring to the Finance Committee maybe more options so that we can figure out where the sweet spot is in order to make people happy in terms of this cutting down on this cost.
Okay. That is our plan.
Okay.
I have some, for now.
But Bob and then Jeff.
Okay, well, any sweet spot for me has to include zero expense to CCWD. I mean, I'm not interested in seeing property managers, property owners who presumably invest in property to